What's up? Welcome to the coaches meeting. That's the coach. I'm Grant Cohn, and we're going to be talking about George Kittle for the next half hour or so. We'll talk about other things as well. But it seems like this is George Kittle week. He spoke in his locker for the first time since week one yesterday. And I don't know, it struck me as like more than just a normal George Kittle press conference because the timing of it all. This is just a few days after Fred Warner went down for the season. And when he went down in that game, he's their best player. He's their leader. And it felt like a funeral in that locker room after that one particular game. The players were kind of shook. And this team is 4-2. And they have a lot in front of them. They should still be good. And now you have a new leader coming back to sort of take the place of Fred Warner for the rest of the season. And it was interesting to hear George Kittle talk. You guys have probably seen his conference from his locker yesterday. If not, it's on my channel. But let's go through it. I can summarize parts. First, he talked about the run game. Why is it not working? And he essentially said, one, they've had a lot of they've faced really good defensive lines, which means the offensive line isn't winning. Two, they've had a bunch of different players at tight end and wide receiver, which is code, Kendrick Bourne isn't Jawan Jennings, and Jawan Jennings isn't Jawan Jennings, and Jake Tonjes isn't Kittle. And finally, the play calls on the other team have been better than the play calls on the Niners. He didn't put anything on Christian, which I wouldn't expect him to. What do you think of what George said about the run game?
I think the big picture, he talked about cohesion, communication issues, and especially on combo blocks. And he definitely talked about new personnel fits. That was kind of like the net of what he covered. And I agree. I believe that the numbers, the devil is in the details with the Niners as far as the run game is concerned. We average 4.0 yards a carry on first downs for the season. And it's something that we really have to get to. I'm here to tell you that I believe that the Niners are getting back their best offensive lineman in George Kittle. It helps a lot. I'm not here to talk about what guys have done this far as the run game performances, the tight ends that we've had. But with Fred back, I do believe that things may change a little bit with what Fred was initially here to do. Initially, Luke Farrell came on and Fred was going to be seen as having an uptick in the passing game. I believe that Fred is going to get back to kind of like his old use case. George. So sorry. George is going to get back to his old use case with the team. As far as being an inline blocker to help out. One of the biggest things is communication issues. They don't know what they're doing when they get exotic fronts. The markup on this offensive line, Grant, is to go 5 down and to use simulated pressure, get these guys confused when they have to run their predetermined blocking routes as far as outside zone is concerned. And it's confusing, guys. I watched a lot of film, especially the last game, and you saw missed blocks from Dominic Pooney on pulling stunts. You saw confusion from Connor Colby on combo blocks with Jake Brindle. That stuff, I understand that it's easy to just label it all bad. But I think what George did is he categorized the issues and gave them all their own prioritization. One of the biggest things is cohesion. Him coming back is huge. Secondly, another thing he talked about, Grant, was some of the coaching that's been going on with the play calling that's been going on, where they're so bad at it, they don't have any runs or anything that they can actually go to, any bread and butter plays that they like. So one thing that I will say is that when you can block it, hopefully it's a trickle-down effect and Kyle gets a little bit more confidence to start using more backs. I hope that's what he was talking about when he started leaning towards personnel. Maybe we see Jordan James get inserted into the lineup. Maybe we see Brian Robinson Jr. get a little bit more of an uptick with running the ball. But for the most part, I think that George gave a very team-friendly answer, and he touched on everything. It was a buffet of truth, to be honest. Everything he said was true.
Prize Picks will give you $50 when you play your first $5 lineup. Win or lose, you'll get $50 for playing. Use promo code COHN, COHN, and download the app now. I think what I took from his answer was that he was saying, look, there's only so much I can do. Like, I'll push. I think he said, I'll push as hard as I can. I'll strain as hard as I can, but that's not going to change the fact that this offensive line is getting beat by the opposing defensive line weekly. It's not going to change the fact that Kendrick Bourne really isn't much of a blocker. Ricky Pearsall really isn't much of a blocker. I mean, you put it out on Twitter. Like these wide receivers are not blocking the way they did 2-3 years ago.
No.
Yeah, fix it. And then, of course, there's Christian, who we all have eyes. He's not bad, but he's not what he used to be. So those are all freaking issues. And I think it was the one thing he said at the end, too, at his locker was like, we're still trying to figure out our identity on offense. They don't really know who they are, what they do well. They know they pass the ball a lot, but that's not really a recipe to win, and they don't score in the red zone. So now that Kittle's back, they can sort of figure out an identity, but they haven't even done that.
The biggest thing for me is keeping what you already have, right? Take the best and leave the rest. I hate to put it to you, is that a team that doesn't have an identity 6 weeks into the season, guess what? You have an identity. You're a team with no identity. That's what you are, right? So we do have an identity, and we're a passing team. We just are. And trying to completely halt the wheels of progress and go all the way in reverse and try to say, oh, well, we got 1 to 2 guys back. Let's load it up and try to go back with what we do with running the ball on the ground. I think that would hurt us. What I believe is that we should undergird what we've shown that we're strong at. It's not the fact that we need to get back to 2023, what we did on the ground. Grant, I would take 75 yards on the ground. I'd take 80 yards averaging on the ground. I would take that with what we've shown, what we can do in the passing game. If we just had a comparable run game, that would rise all boats. That's how I feel about it.
So when Kittle spoke at his locker, these things are interesting because there's what the reporters want to talk about, and there's what the player wants to talk about. And sometimes you don't realize it, but a player like Kittle, he comes to these interviews with an agenda. There's things he wants to say.
True.
Because he's a team leader and he's thoughtful and he's prepared. So the questions for him early on were like, how's your hamstring? And what can you say about the run game? That's not what he wanted to talk about. The hamstring, he said it was fully torn. He's back 5 weeks later. Wow, he's Superman. Incredible.